Well, thank you very much for joining me today. What we're going to talk about is lessons from the practice interview team, how to be a confident candidate when you're interviewing. Um, I guess this is, you've already sort of put together a resume. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to, how to go talk with somebody and how to do it the correct way. So a little bit about me. My name is Jeff Morris. My background is light manufacturing and operations. By light manufacturing, it means I didn't produce automobiles. I produced printing press accessories, videotapes, other things that don't involve really heavy equipment. Uh, since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. It's a group that's been meeting since late 1990s. Uh, 40 to 60 people show up on Fridays. Now we're doing it via Zoom. So since we can't meet in person, but the group keeps meeting every week anyway. In 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org. It was a way to sort of put everything somebody needed about job search to try to put it in one location, put everything on one website that everybody could need. Now, before 2008, Google existed, but that really was about it. I mean, if you think about what else was out there, this really was it became a good place for people to put everything they needed for their job search. In 2012, I was invited to go to the White House. There was a White House forum on job clubs and career ministries. The Department of Labor happened to find me a month before. I was able to fly up and stay with a friend, so it didn't cost me a whole lot of money. It was a one-day seminar. I met people from all over the United States. I was the only representative from the state of Texas there. And we talked about issues and what was going on in for career placement and how to help job seekers. In 2012, after coming back from the White House, I decided to launch CareerUSA.org, a second website to help people outside the DFW area. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team conducting interviews. I've done over 100, 125 interviews in the last couple of years to help job candidates. So this is something the practice interview team, they meet every Wednesday. Now via Zoom, they're meeting any day of the week and they're conducting interviews to help people conduct an interview. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about, first thing we're going to do is we're going to start preparing for the race. My whole presentation is a little bit, or most of my presentation is sort of race oriented. If you take practice interview team, that also stands for the pit crew. So here we are in a race car pit. So a lot of my things will sort of, be associated with racing. So first thing we want to do is prepare what we need to do before we get started. Then we want to make sure we get a good start off the line. We want to make sure we avoid crashing. How do we do that? We're going to talk about how to make sure we finish strong, and then maybe a couple post-race activities that we need to consider. So number one, preparing for the race. Preparation is key to being confident. You really need to think about, I actually heard somebody a couple of weeks ago throw out the statistic saying that for every, if your interview is going to last 1 hour, you should spend 4 to 5 hours in preparation. What do you do in 4 to 5 hours? Well, you need to research the person you're interviewing. You need to research the company. You need to research companies that they're competing with. You need to do everything you can to find out about the job, about the position, be aware, have all your stories and your answers rehearsed and practiced. So the second thing, part of being confident, and when we talk about preparing your stories, is preparing your star stories. Now, you may have heard of star stories. There's also a couple different ways to do it. Let me bring up the third thing here. The star story is situation, the task, the action you took, and the positive result. Now, some people may go and they may want to call it RATS, which I think, it's a little bit, it's where you tell the result first. I prefer to use something called RAW, which is result, action, and why you did it. But, star story seems to be the thing that everybody thinks about. So just, by preparing your stories, and what are your star stories? Your star stories, let me back up here, your star stories are your bullet points from your resume. Your star stories are, what did I do at my last job? What did I do at the job before that? You know, how am I qualified to do what I'm doing? So if you can tell a story, people love to hear a good story. And the most important thing about a story is you've got to make sure that you can tell your story in 60 to 90 seconds. One of the pitfalls, and I'll talk about that later, is that, or in the future, a little bit, is if you talk too long, if you only have a half-hour interview and you tell 3-minute stories, you may only have an opportunity to tell somebody 4 or 5 stories and then you're out of time. So by keeping things short, it makes things work a lot better. The other thing you want to do, prepare for the race, is you need to prepare some questions. By asking good questions, the interviewer will go, oh, you've sort of really prepared for this. You know, one of the good questions that I like to ask is, well, I'll get my mouth working today. New year, I haven't got my mouth going yet. What are some common traits of your best workers? You know, or maybe what was it about my background that interested you the most? Okay, so by asking these questions, you then maybe have an idea of, well, I like you because you had this trait in your background. I heard about somebody who had when they asked this question, what was about my background? And it was one little word halfway through the first page that they had used. And it was just like, we saw this word, this is what we searched for. Your resume came up, and this is why we want to interview you. So ask some good interview questions. What I sort of recommend is take a blank piece of paper. And I think we in fact may even talk about it here, is ask 10 questions and come up, write 10 questions down on a piece of paper, just to remind yourself of what you want to ask during the interview. You want to make sure you dress appropriately, okay? You want to look good, okay? Here is a story. All these stories that I will tell you, these are all things that are true. I don't make this stuff up. This came from my Friday group. I had a gentleman who went interviewing. There was an interview down in Arlington for truck drivers. They were looking for semi-truck drivers. And he happened to go, and so he was there, and he said, yeah, everybody was in blue jeans, and they had these big giant belt buckles and cowboy hats on, Western cut shirts. They were offering people jobs right and left. And I talked to a bunch of people, but they never offered me, you know, I didn't get a job offer right then. I was a little disappointed. Well, 2 weeks later, he gets a phone call from one of those companies going, well, we know you were at our job fair. We really appreciate you coming. But we want to offer you a job managing the people that we just hired. And he asked him why. He said, well, you were there in a suit, so we figured you must have been, you know, more senior level. And he just went for a truck driving job. So here he is now going to be managing other drivers who are out on the road. So by dressing appropriate, dress one level up from whatever you think would be appropriate. Okay, so looking nice, it really can help. So getting a good start. So first thing you want to do is when you sit down with somebody is you want to make sure you express interest in the position right up front. And if you can, give a couple reasons. I'm really excited about being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk about this. And you know, 2 reasons I'm really excited is, number one, I've done this in the past and I know I can help your company succeed, or something like that. So if you can do that, come up, and that's something you can really prepare beforehand. You know, why are you going in? What makes it exciting? You know, why are you going? It would be very helpful. Number 2, you want to make sure you ask for a business card or get their contact information if you didn't get it before you went. So if you don't know who you're interviewing with and you show up, you know, either write down their name, get their name, phone number, email address, or if they have a business card, ask them for a business card. That way you've got other contact information. That makes it easy to remember who you're talking with. And if you're talking to a couple people, if you have 2 or 3 people in front of you, what I like to do is I will put their business cards laid out in the order that they're at so that I can remember that here's Susie, here's Joe, and here's Mary. Or I'll write it on the top of my piece of paper what their names are in the order that they're sitting to make it easy. Because if you can use somebody's name during an interview, that will help build some rapport and they will like you more. Have your notes and your questions handy. We've already talked about that. Have that list of questions ready to go. Be prepared for the first question. Most interviews, and I hear this all the time, almost all interviews will talk about, will start with, well, tell me about yourself, or some kind of variation, or walk me through your resume or something. You want to be ready to go. You want to have your statement of enthusiasm. I'm very excited about being here. I know you're looking for an XYZ person, XYZ. You know, I've done this in the past, or I've got these abilities, and I'd love to be able to help your company out. Remember, they have a problem. They're hiring you because they have a problem. You're a problem solver. What is it that you do to solve problems? Then you want to ask your first question. Okay. So after you've come up with that first statement, ask that first question. And the first question could be something as simple as, so, you know, I see on the job description, you're looking for X, Y, and Z. What are the 3 most important things that you would need me to do to be successful in this job? So you now know what they want. If you talk to a couple different people, if you have 2 or 3 different interviews lined up and you talk to one day and one the next day at the same company, everybody may have a different idea of what's most important to them. So if you can, I think it's a good question if you can find out, well, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to do to be successful? How can I help you? You want to be prepared for these 2 questions. Number 1, if you don't already know what the salary is, there's a good chance that they're going to go ask you what your salary requirements are, or what did you make at your last job. A lot of times you already know jobs are posted with salary. Just, you know, be aware. And if it is already posted, you don't even need to bring it up. The second thing, something else that, you know, you probably will come up is, well, why did you leave your last position? You know, you want to stay positive. You want to never, ever throw a previous employer under the bus. So thanks for asking. I learned a lot and I've contributed a lot to ABC Corporation. And then give a very brief comment about the reason. Well, there's a reduction in force, or the office closed, or, you know, due to the pandemic, you know, they had to downsize. I mean, losing a job because of pandemic will be very acceptable. You need to own what happened. You need to be honest. That's the real key here. Be honest. Tell them the truth, not necessarily the god-awful truth. You know, there's a little story about that. The friend of mine who uses this, he'll go and say, well, I forget to take my coupons with me when I go to the grocery store. Well, the truth, so what I did to fix it is I put those coupons in the glove compartment. End of story. Now, the whole story is, well, I forget to take the coupons out of the glove compartment when I go to the grocery. Or if I do and they're in my pocket, I forget to give them to the person when I'm at the checkout lane. So don't tell the whole story. Just tell enough that I left, you know, whatever the basic is, without going into a lot of detail. All right, so we want to avoid some crashes. So here are some things that can stress you out during an interview. Number 1, panel interviews. When you have 2 or 3 people talking to you, who do you talk to? How do you answer? You know, you just want to be very, very careful. My answer, or my suggestion when you're talking to a number of people at an interview, is that no matter who asks the question, you want to make sure you look at everybody, so that every sentence, you know, when you're at the end of a sentence and you're getting ready to start a new sentence, go to the next person and then talk to that person, and then go to the next person and then come back to that person. Don't be zipping back and forth with your eyes back and forth between all 3 people, but just take it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, just so that you can share your eye contact. The leading question interviewer. Well, don't you think it's a good idea that X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah? So they're sort of leading you into an answer. Be very, very careful about this, because they may be setting you up to see where, you know, if they can catch you on something. So you just want to be aware of what the question is. You may have a really friendly interviewer. Oh, it's so nice. How was your day? What's going on? And they'll want to talk so much that, and it sort of leads to the next one here, the chatty interviewer, that you may go for 20 or 30 minutes and they haven't really said anything and they haven't found anything out about you. They need to know who you are and what you can do and how you can help them. So just be aware that sometimes you're going to find a really friendly interviewer, a really chatty interviewer. I know they're at Amazon for some positions. I've heard that they come to be very, very friendly, but they're asking some very interesting questions, being friendly, just trying to see if they can get around your guard. They want to make sure, see if they can catch you. You may get the distracted interviewer. They talk and all of a sudden they look over here to answer somebody's question, or they go look at their computer screen, or whatever it is. You've got to just be careful about that. If you find that it's really distracting and maybe they're really busy, you can always say, I see you're, really, you have a lot of other things on your plate. Would it be better if I came back in an hour, or, can we reschedule this for tomorrow, make it more convenient? So it's okay to say something like that if you notice that they're really all over the place. You may find the unprepared interviewer. And this is also sort of the uninformed interviewer. So this person's unprepared. They just got your resume 5 seconds beforehand. I mean, you showed up, the manager is really busy, so he pulls in somebody else and said, here, go talk to this person. So the person has no idea who you are, why you're there, or what the job's even about. So just sort of be aware of that. But be prepared to tell your story. Be prepared to tell them why you're interested in the job. You may have to sort of lead the interview. And you could get somebody with the silent treatment who will just sort of ask a question and they won't say anything. And when they're doing this, they're testing you because they want to see if you'll keep talking. And if you're quiet, if you're still talking. And they just want to see where you're going to go. What kind of rabbit holes are you going to go down, or how you're going to put your foot in your mouth by saying too much. So when those kinds of things happen, if you happen to, if you get to, they ask you a question, you answer it, and then they don't say anything. Well, you can always say, would you like to know more? Or you could say, can I tell you a story about a time when I did X, Y, or Z? Things that that are associated with the job. So, or the other thing is, did I answer your question? Because then you've thrown it back to them by asking that question. Okay, here's some more easy to mistake questions. Number one, speaking too much or too little. You don't want to just say yes or no. You don't want to spend too much time on, well, here's what the situation was. This is why we had to do something. To me, the most important thing is the result. I want to know how you interacted with other people, how you helped customers, how you performed in the job. To me, that's the most important thing. You want to make sure you don't wander off in the weeds. I talked about that, about talking, if you talk too much, you're filling up the silence with too much information, because there's a good chance you will put your foot in your mouth. It will happen, and you want to be careful about that. Like I said, tell your story. Did I answer your question? Would you like to know more? Those are two very easy ways to sort of, if they're quiet and they're not saying anything else, how you can do something. You got to be careful about talking in generalities. You need to be specific. You've got to mention, if you can, mention metrics. Okay. I look at a lot of interviews. I see a lot of resumes. I review a lot of resumes. And what I tend to see is people write their resume with, you have the company name and what your job title was, and then you put 3 or 4 bullet points underneath it. Those bullet points need to be a result, a metric of something you've done. I don't want to see something that looks like a job description, because you're telling me what you were supposed to do. You didn't tell me how you succeeded in what you're doing. Results sell. So if you can somehow if you can document something, well, some lady I was talking with said, well, I'm just a receptionist. I don't have any really results. I said, well, so how many phone calls do you think you get every week? Oh, we get maybe 350 to 400 phone calls. And how many people do you have to disperse those to? Oh, there's 26 people who work here. There you go. You now have a metrics. I answer 400 phone calls on average, 400 phone calls a week, distributing those to 26 people. There's a story that tells somebody what you do and at what level you do it at. All right, a couple more easy to make mistakes. Number one, to forget to take credit. A lot of times people want to use, well, the team did this, we did this, we built this building, we, laid this road, we moved the warehouse around. But what did you do? Okay. So you want to use that. You want to make sure that people know what it is you do, because I want to know what your value is. I'm not hiring the team. I'm hiring you to fill a need, and I need to know what it is you can do. Second, I want to, and I mentioned this before, you never want to speak negatively about a previous job, a previous coworker, or previous boss, no matter how bad it was. Listen, I remember I had a job at first Monday in January after New Year's Eve of the year 2000. The computers didn't crash, but I was called in my boss's office and I was laid off. I was mad about it. I was upset. But you can't talk about the negativity. You can't be negative about a boss who was, well, it was wrong or whatever. You've got to say, I learned a lot while I was there. I really was excited about being there, but it was time for me to move on. Just, keep it as positive as you can. People don't like negative people. Be careful about focusing too much attention on a single interviewer, especially in a panel interview. If you just talk to one person all the time, the other two people are not going to like you very much. So it's just that you want to build that personal rapport. Like I said, if you can use your name into an answer, if you can build it into an answer, that would be great. All right, so here are a few common things that people may go and ask you. This is sort of called a behavioral interview. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Think about that. These are some things you need to think about. When's the time? Now, a good thing to do is do this. Maybe, well, the first job I had when I got out of high school, I had a job doing this, and I really sort of messed up. But I learned since then that I need to be more diligent in what I'm doing. So if you made a mistake, it's okay to mention the mistake, make it years ago, but tell people how you've learned from that mistake. Tell me about a time that you and your boss disagreed. That's always a really toughie. So, you just say, I had a good open rapport with my boss. My boss would say something, I would present my point of view. He would say, this is why I need you to do it this way. And I followed his lead because he was the boss. Tell me about a time when you had a coworker that was not pulling their weight. That's always an interesting question. Well, I just sort of jumped in and helped out. I talked with the person. I tried to sit down, one day at lunch, I sat down with them and, I was trying to find out, what's going on? Is there something going on in your life? Well, yeah, my mom's dying right now. She's really sick. My sister's in the hospital. My wife's leaving me, whatever it is, maybe they're having some struggles. So maybe you can help them out short term and maybe be that friend or be able to help them. So, just because a coworker isn't pulling a weight doesn't mean that, they're doing it on purpose. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a coworker. Tell me about a time when you were recognized for an accomplishment. So can you think of a time that you were recognized for doing something really good? Have that story ready to go. For all these things, you may want to sit down with a piece of paper and sort of journal this stuff out or write these things down, because when you write something down, the act of physically taking a pen or pencil to a piece of paper helps lock it into your memory. So think about some of these stories. Tell me about a time that you went over and above what was required. There's probably a good time. Tell me about a time that you failed to deliver what was expected. You know, what you least like about your last boss? All right, so here's a setup. That's the setup question. So they want to know what didn't you like about your boss, but you need to keep it positive. You got to keep it positive. Okay. Uh, Adam has this whole presentation. So if you need any of these questions and you need him, to call him up, so you can sort of think about these things, he can print out this page for you or get this information for you. A couple more things. If you're having some difficulties coming up with accomplishments and you can't really think about, well, here's something I've done. Well, here are a couple things. I'm really good about attention to detail. I'm committed to the job. When I take a job, I'm here. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Just because it's 5 o'clock doesn't mean I'm going to leave. If I still have stuff to do, I'm going to stay and get the job done. I'm creative. I'm very, creativity is one of my strengths. I'm really good about motivating other people and helping us all so we can all succeed and get things done. I'm, one of my good accomplishments, I'm good at relieving the load to free up somebody else. If somebody else needs it, I'm willing to step up and help out. Pitching in the Bell Water, or championing a new initiative, or changing to a new computer system, and it's like, well, yeah, I'd love to learn it, and I'll be glad to help make sure it happens. So, here are a few things that you can use if you can't think of some accomplishments that you've had. Now, we've been talking about behavioral interview questions. This one tends to come up a lot. You'll hear this: what's your greatest weakness, or what's your greatest strength? Be careful. What they're talking about when they say what's your greatest weakness is what's your greatest weakness in the contents of this position. You can't say chocolate. You can't say pizza. You can't say women. You need to talk about, well, you need to think about something. And this could be an issue of something that came up years ago that you have turned your weakness into a strength. So here's sort of an answer that, sort of an outline of an answer here. As I understand your situation here, I'll be expected to do X, Y, and Z. I have experience in all of these areas, but if I had to pick the one that I would say I'm the least qualified in, this is where I'm going to continue to work to develop my skills. So if you can keep it focused on the job, it's going to make you seem more thoughtful, and that you're thinking about yourself and how you can help the company out. I always love this cartoon, especially if you're going to go work for IKEA. I guess everybody's going to have to put together your own seat. So now we want to finish strong. All right. So number one, we want to ask any questions that you haven't asked yet. I said you have a list of 10 questions, maybe, 5 to 10 questions, whatever, about the job or about, what it is you want to do. And this shows that you're interested in the position. If you have some questions, because at the end, they'll usually say, do you have any other questions? Well, yeah, I've got a couple more here that we haven't gotten to. If you can ask a couple of those questions during the interview, great. If not, save them for the very end. Sometimes when people say, save your questions for the very end, that's okay. Always make sure you find out what the next step is going to be. Very, very important, because you don't want to leave there not knowing what's coming up next, or what do you need to do next, okay? If you can, you want to ask for feedback towards the end of an interview. So how do I compare to the ideal candidate? Don't say how do I compare to the other candidates, but how do I compare to the ideal candidate? They're a perfect person that they're looking for. If you know what it is, then you can make sure after that, as soon as you hear that, then you can say as well, I'm really excited about being here. You express even greater interest in the position. So sort of your statement of enthusiasm from the very beginning, and say, you talked about that you're really looking for somebody who can do X, Y, Z. As I've said, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And, if you want to, I want to be advanced to the next step. Or if you feel like it's okay, ask for the job. I'm ready to start tomorrow. Hire me. So after the interview's over, a couple of things you may want to do. If you can send a thank you note, that would be great. I mean, if you've got some, can be as easy as if you get some cardstock, some blank cardstock, cut it in half, fold it over like a little card. I suggest you take a couple of those with you, and maybe when the interview's over, go back out, sit in the lobby, sit there, write them a thank you note card, and you can just hand it to the receptionist. And don't forget to thank the receptionist, because she's a very important person. But can you make sure that Joe gets this? Just thanking him for the interview. People, who doesn't love to receive a piece of mail? If you can send them an email, that's great too. But thank you notes, I think, are just very, very important, especially if you can do that. And then if you set up, a follow-up phone call, like say, well, we're not going to be making a decision for another week or so. You should say at the very end, well, all right, so I understand you're not going to make a decision next Friday. If I don't hear from you by next Friday at noon, is it okay if I call you? And if that's the case, you call them next Friday at noon. Whatever you say you're going to do, make sure you do that. Okay, so here's a few other things I want to sort of go over. For those people who have a background, there's been a eligibility report. I'm sorry, let me turn that off. Thought I had it off. This is called an eligibility report. Adam has copies of this. And for this is where, we say you got to own what's happened to yourself. And so if you have a background that you're going to need to disclose on an application, you need to let people know about it. So here's what the form looks like. Let me sort of go over a little bit things here first. Number one, you want to highlight related training and work experience. If your criminal background includes prison time and you took advantage of training or work opportunities during that time, you can include these experiences on your resume. You should, and tell people what it was you learned to do. Be sure to write down the name of the facility and your title in your resume work experience section. Put it down on there. Own what happened and tell people what you learned. You want to make sure you treat this position as you would any other position, and write about the skills that you developed. If you learned anything new, or just tell people about what it is you do and any of the positive contributions you made. If you completed further education while in prison, write down the name of the sponsoring institution along with the details of your training and in the education section. Keep in mind, employers are less interested in your early career. Any history or job activities from more than 10 or 15 years ago can usually be omitted. Now, it's interesting. We did a resume class this afternoon, and the person leading it said, well, here's what I recommend. If you think you're going to talk about what you did more than 10 years ago, if it's not on your resume, you really can't talk about experience you learned or how you helped people then. So if you think that there is a job that you had before, 10 or 15 years before, that is relevant, you may want to put a little section on your resume that says relevant job experience or previous relevant job experience, and just list the company and the years. You don't have to list anything else, just so that if you all of a sudden, when you're in an interview, you say, well, I used to work at ABC Corporation and we did it. Well, I don't see ABC Corporation on your resume. You will confuse the interviewer. Make sure that you're fully aware of what any potential employer and other decision makers will see when they check out your criminal background. I used to work at a bathroom remodeling company, and we did background checks on everybody who got hired. And I would ask them in an interview, we're going to be doing a background check. What am I going to find? Am I going to find anything? And I would hire people with backgrounds. I didn't have a problem doing that. That wasn't an issue. But the issue was, if I found something and they didn't tell me about it, they were out. Be honest and upfront about what happened. You want to make sure you get a copy of your official criminal history record from a local police department or sheriff's office. And if possible, be sure to get a private background report from a provider such as HireRight or First Advantage. These are two companies that offer them. I'm not sure what the cost is, but you want to find out what's out there about you, because when I go run a background check, you need to know what's out there about you. You've got to know the number of times you've been arrested, whether each charge or conviction was a misdemeanor or a felony, so you can provide the correct information to potential employers. Very, very important. Like I said, if you're honest about what's going on, it won't be an issue. But if you don't tell the whole truth, if you don't tell the truth, I'm going to kick you out, as well as most employers. So if you do have a record, you've got to be the one to shoot the elephant. Okay, you've got to be the one to tell people what it was, what happened. Describe the situation very briefly and factually. Okay, don't need a long story. Like I said, I leave coupons. I forget to take my coupons, so I put them in the car. But I forget to get out of the glove box, and I get to. But then I leave them in my pocket, and I forget to give. You don't tell the whole story. Just tell them what you did. Just what it was, as briefly as possible. Explain what you've done to correct the problem. Okay, you're in a great program right now with Adam, Salvation Army. You wouldn't be in this program right now if you didn't qualify. So this is one of the steps that you're doing to correct the problem. You want to reassure them that there is no risk of a similar problem happening to you in the future. Okay, that's going to interrupt stuff. And then you want to redirect the job back to your qualifications for the job. So yeah, this happened to me in the past, but I have the experience that you need for me to complete and help your company out. On the job application, answer the appropriate question, and in the space provided with the details, see attached eligibility report. You don't need to necessarily fill out all the details or copy everything over. You can use that separate report, but just write in there when they're doing it. Now, if they're only asking for felonies and you have some misdemeanors, read the question very carefully, okay? Sometimes it says felony and convictions. So if they don't talk about misdemeanors, you don't need to talk about misdemeanors. I don't talk about the traffic ticket I got in Irving back in 1980, whatever, because it's a misdemeanor and it doesn't really make any difference. You want to be able to explain any expunged or deferred adjudication cases that are showing up on your report. So if it shows up on your record, you need to be able to explain what's going on here. Very, very important. So here's what the report looks like. It sort of says at the beginning, I wish to disclose the following information regarding my background to assist you in your employment decision. I've committed myself to making a positive change in my life. And as a result, I've committed by celebrating X months of sobriety, or I'm currently working with the Salvation Army to help me become a productive person and in my place of employment and my personal life. You list whatever felonies or whatever you need to. At the bottom, a little bit of information about what's going on. I've completed my probation. I've completed all the assigned counseling requirements. I've paid off all my fines. I'm currently in good standing with the county and state. I'm no longer in the person I am as at that time. And then you can, put your name and phone number at the very, very bottom. So a couple of things here. Number one, if you find here's the thing, you don't want to wait. You need to really do this as quickly as you can. You need to put together a folder of all the information added, because if you find incorrect information, it's going to be hard to get it fixed quickly, okay? So you want to make sure that you correct the information with the provider of the report and inform any potential employers of the situation. So if you find that, on one of these criminal backgrounds that, you may see that this, I have this had popped up. This did not happen. I have paperwork to prove it. I have filed with the court to have that changed. Don't do it confrontationally, but just do it as very informative. You want to find out if any of the charges on your criminal history qualify for expungement. And if you can, complete the process, whatever it takes to get them off your record, if it's possible. Be prepared for your job search by getting copies of any related court records showing that these charges were dismissed or restricted, in case an employer would ask. If an employer runs a background check and finds anything on you, they're required to give you a copy of that background check, is my understanding. Most companies will do that. You know, if they don't hire you for some reason and they just don't tell you anything, they're not going to tell you, well, we're not hiring you because of your background or because we found this on your background check and you didn't disclose it. They're probably just not going to answer it. But if they do run a background check, my understanding is that people are required to give, to give you a copy of that. If you wait to get all these items after the employer asks, you may miss the opportunity because it may not be easy for you to go get records. I mean, you can't really go to the courthouse right now because they don't want people in the building. And so you have to file for things online and then trying to get them. It's not easy. It could take a few weeks. So start the process now and put together a folder, put together a little binder of these things that has everything in it so that you're ready to go and you have all the information and you can show somebody just in case they ask. Always answer the questions truthfully. Like I said, tell the truth. Tell the truth about your criminal history, but don't provide any more information that's requested. Here is the truth, not the god-awful truth. If an application only asks about convictions, do not list arrests that didn't result in convictions. That's why I say read that question very carefully, however it's worded. If the application only asks about felony convictions, do not provide information about misdemeanor offenses. When talking about your criminal history, take responsibility for past actions. Emphasize how you moved on in a positive way. You want to make sure you share some positive experiences with potential employers. Potential employers will not be impressed by hearing negative feelings you have about your case. Oh, well, the cop, I mean, he was wrong, or, my ex-wife did this, or, whatever it was, the judge wasn't being fair. Stay positive. People don't like negative people. So here are a few things that you might want to say. There is no excuse for the way I behaved. If I could go back in time and do things differently, I would. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but the truth is I should never have been in that place at that time doing the kinds of things I was doing. I was stupid. I was 18. I was a teenager, whatever. I've grown up since then. What I would do differently now is to make sure that I'm spending time with people who are on the same page as I am, heading in the same direction. If I'd been doing those same things, I would not have been in that place at that time. So here are just a few things that you may be able to, say if you how to answer those things. If you can, you want to be able to share some positive accomplishments. Letter of recommendation from employer or advocates. Your preacher, I'm sure Adam, he's going to get to know you if he doesn't know you already in this program. He'll be able to help out. If you have any training program certificates, including time from incarceration you've completed, have those, be ready to share those. If you need to try to gather those up, try to reach out and gather those up. Participating in this program and other recovery programs, they all, those are a positive accomplishment that you want to be able to share. So at this point, that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop the share so you can see me and I can see you better. And you can tell me questions you've got, and I'll be glad to answer them for you.
I got a question about using references. Like, so say some your references, they're not up to date. Maybe they've been at a past job that you haven't worked at for about 2 years, but you feel like they might be credible to some of the skill sets that you're going for in a new job. Can I still use them?
Yes, the whole key to references is you want to make sure that your references know you're looking for a job. Okay, so if you haven't talked to them in a couple of years, you need to reach out to them and you need to let them know you're looking for a job. Can I still use you for a reference? Would that be okay? Okay, because What I tell people is if they've been a reference, or if they're going and interviewing for a question, the best thing they can do is let the references know that, hey, I just had an interview at XYZ company. They may be calling you, because quite frankly, I don't answer phone calls if I don't know who they're from. If it's just a phone number coming over and the phone number's not in my phone, I'm not going to answer it. It's going to have to go to voicemail. So if you let them know, that will help you, because they can actually help you and say, you want to make sure it's still okay with them. So reach back out to them if you can. Take the time now to reach out to them and find a couple resumes, find a couple references.
Oh, well, with that too, what if you're struggling to have references for a certain type of job, like, so you've been in the education field and you're trying to get into a different market and you just don't quite have those references, that give you, I guess, the credibility for that particular job, how does that work? Do I just kind of wing it, or, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's a little bit more difficult. I would say for the all right, well, let me start out with number one. Number one, I don't think most employers check references. Okay. I know that when I was hiring people, I rarely called references. I either like you, I liked how you talked to me, and I'd offer you a job. Or I'd think about it overnight and then offer you a job. I rarely called references. I do know my daughter just happened to get a new job, and she was required to go enter some references, and they wanted 2 coworkers. So she had to go. She only had 1 coworker that she had put on her reference list that she had in her mind, but she had to go call up another coworker, going, hey, they're asking for, they wanted a coworker. Will you do this for me? So I think it's sort of tough. Depending on the industry, references are more important than not. So it's a real mix. If you find that it is, I don't know, you're going to have to find some people who can talk about your character. Anybody else? Any other questions?
They're really looking at me.
We gotta go flag.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. They have another group coming up. So
Okay.
I guess that's it.
That's it. Well, Adam, thank you very much. Group, good luck, everybody. Hope you wish you all best success and very happy and healthy and safe 2021.
All right.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Bye-bye.